Hello, welcome to the Believe Show. Today, our guest is Rashmi Menon. Hi, Rashmi.
Hello, how are you?
And I'm thrilled to tell you a few things about Rashmi. So let me tell you a few things about her and then we'll get started. Rashmi is an entrepreneur in residence and a lecturer in entrepreneurial studies at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business. She has launched numerous businesses and products within large corporations, including within the Walt Disney Company, Microsoft, and Yahoo, as well as founding and managing numerous startups. One thing that I'll tell you about Rashmi that's not in her bio is she's an awesome teacher. She teaches at this. I have taken her class on product management at Stanford when she was there, so she's an awesome, awesome instructor as well. Hi.
Hi, thank you, Senya. That's very kind of you.
Thrilled that you're on. We're going to get started with silly questions, okay?
Yep, absolutely.
First one, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I think that evolved a lot. I think every year I had a different thing I wanted to be. But, at one point it was a doctor, a lawyer. But some of the more interesting things, I definitely enjoyed teaching. So I wanted to be a teacher at one point. And travel agent, I think, was another thing I wanted to be. Yes. So I would collect brochures from all the places we went, and I would pretend I was a travel agent.
That's really cool. Next question. What is one of your favorite foods?
So as you know, Senya, I am vegan. And so one of the things I really love is this thing called yuba, which I know you've had as well, which is made out of tofu skin. And you can use it for a lot of different things. You can use it to wrap things in, and or vegetables in, or you can make pasta with it. I like it a lot.
I hope people try it. I have only tried it because you introduced me to it, and it's amazing in soups and stews. It's got just a really cool texture.
Yes, you can find it dried or in the frozen section of a local Asian supermarket if you have an Asian market.
So drop us a comment if you do try this yuba, if you try it and you love it. Let us know afterwards.
YUBA.
Next question. High school can be a challenging time. What was a good part of high school for you?
I was lucky. There are two things I'll mention. One is that I did have a couple of really, really close friends. And one of them actually continues to be someone I talk to frequently, even now, after all these years. So that's been that was really, really great support. And I was also lucky to have some really great teachers who really inspired me and just kind of helped me become intellectually curious. I think that's what they really sparked in me. So I was very, very thankful for that.
That's awesome. And now believe. Rashmi, what is it that you believe that others may not agree with you about?
Yeah, so I think, entrepreneurship has become very popular, very much covered in the media of late. And, when you notice a lot of these stories about entrepreneurs coming up, we usually hear about Jeff Bezos or Bill Gates or Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk, or, there's a common set of people who are frequently spoken about. And if you notice, there are some common traits amongst those people who have been mentioned. They are all cis, straight, white men who come from relatively wealthy backgrounds, right? And not only are these the people covered, but they're covered in very heroic terms a lot of the time. So, a lot of times when startup articles are written, it's all about the heroic startup entrepreneur who has this vision that's beyond something that any of us have, who just has this amazing idea that none of us could come up with, and that they build this company all by themselves, right? Yeah. To the point where I've heard that the Iron Man character that Robert Downey Jr. plays in the Marvel movies is partially based on Elon Musk. So literally a superhero, right? And so, not only is that happening in popular media, but it happens in academia as well. If you look at the case studies available for us to teach from in the entrepreneurship field, most of those are written about similar types of people. Now, the challenge with that, why is that a bad thing, right? I mean, that's fine. These people are all good entrepreneurs. They're successful. They've obviously done well. Let's write about them. Of course, that makes sense. But the problem is that tends to make preconceptions about who can be an entrepreneur, and to the point where it actually affects what resources are available to entrepreneurs. So if you look at how, for example, one of the common things that fast-growing startups need are access to capital, right? In particular, if you're doing something like a tech startup, you need venture funding for your tech startup. And the challenge is that if you look back at the data, so in 2018, the amount of venture funding that was given to women-founded startups was less than 2% of all the venture funding that's given. And if you look at women of color, it's actually 0.2% of the funding. And this is despite the fact that women-founded startups yield on average twice the return of male-founded startups. Another study recently came out that was done in Israel, and they looked at all the factors that might contribute to the success of an entrepreneur. And the number one factor was the wealth of the parents of the founder. And so other than just being something that's unfortunate from a diversity standpoint, the problem also is that when you only fund certain types of entrepreneurs, you tend to only fund certain types of businesses. So you may notice we might get, 5 home grocery delivery companies founded in the period of a year. There was a point when we had, not just grocery delivery, but, DoorDash and Postmates and all these things were founded at the same time. But how many startups are we getting that deal with issues of women's health or non-traditional bank customers? Or, other thing and important, but may not get as much attention because the people who are getting funded are not working in that area. So I think there's both an individual impact. I actually have had a woman come to my office hours before and say something like, which really broke my heart. She said, "Oh, I don't know if I deserve to be an entrepreneur," right? And that's not something we want to hear anybody saying. So I think it's both painful on an individual level, but can also potentially be damaging on a societal level when you look at what problems are we solving and are those the right ones to be solving.
So what I hear you saying is because of the way that entrepreneurship is portrayed, and specifically the heroic stature of the people men who are portrayed as the entrepreneurs, a lot of people are losing their will to try to be an entrepreneur. A lot of systems aren't set up to try to start to fund those people.
That's exactly it. So it's two things. One is obviously entrepreneurship involves a certain amount of self-selection, right? People who become entrepreneurs are deliberately saying, I'm not going to take this job, or I'm not going to go to this graduate school, or whatever it is, a choice that they're making a choice to become an entrepreneur. And it is common that people who come from, those more diverse backgrounds may be less willing to consider entrepreneurship as an opportunity for them because they don't see people like them being portrayed as entrepreneurs. And the second question is the one that you meant. The second issue is basically the resource allocation, right? So in any society, we have to allocate resources. In any business marketplace, we have to allocate resources. And there are any number of resources that an entrepreneur needs to be successful, right? Everything dealing with, money to fund the company, customers, employees, everybody who would rally around an entrepreneur to make that venture successful. And that is just a lot harder to do when you come from a more diverse background because of what we think about what is a strong entrepreneur, what is a successful entrepreneur, right?
Rashmi, as you teach these case studies that often may focus on the white male as the lead entrepreneur, what do you do to temper that message or to encourage people to still go for it?
Yeah, very good question. So number one, I try to have as many diverse case study participants and speakers as guest speakers as I can. So I try to kind of temper what happens in general by trying to scour through the case studies that are available to be able to teach case studies about women, people who live outside of the U.S., just people from people of color, people of different backgrounds. Also do the same thing for my guest speakers. So I think typically I'll have maybe 6 or 7 guest speakers in a term. 6 out of the 7 tend to be people who are from, women, people of color, international folks. So trying to just bring my diversity where I can. I've also tried to make that a rule for when I write my own case studies. I haven't written too many yet, but the ones that I have written are also, I'm trying to make a commitment that I'm going to write case studies about people from diverse backgrounds so that we can, try to moderate a little bit of what's out there already in the library.
Yeah. And how are your students responding to this?
They love it. They love it. Because, if you think about it, business schools, I'm not going to say the business schools are necessarily the most diverse, communities out there, but they have also made a real effort to try to bring more balance to the classroom. And so you're going to have students from diverse backgrounds as well. And so I think they really like to see the fact that they're hearing about entrepreneurs that are not just the standard ones you read about in the paper. And potentially, like I said, reflect people more like them.
Yeah, I was just thinking that. Yeah. What else has been important for your students as they try to move forward towards entrepreneurship? and as they're just learning about it from you, but they're probably not experienced in it yet. What else has been important for them?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm really happy about in my current role, I'm very lucky that not only do I teach, but I'm also this entrepreneur in residence at our residential institute, at our Entrepreneurship Institute at the business school. And what that gives is the opportunity, we create a number of co-curricular programs that allow students to actually start businesses when they're on campus. And so we have, all manner of programs, funding, mentoring. We try to connect people with customers, with advisors, whatever we can do to help people become entrepreneurs while they're at school. We also work with alums. And in addition to entrepreneurship programs, we also have venture funds that are student-led. So there's venture money that we have, and basically students determine where this funding goes. So we're trying to provide as much hands-on experience. The kind of buzzword in academia is action-based learning, right? So action-based learning is what everybody is excited about now. And we try to do that as much as possible, both in our classes and through these co-curricular programs. But yes, I think you've also had experience as an entrepreneur, and I think we can agree that you can't just learn entrepreneurship from a book, right? You have to be able to go out there and actually try it and do it if it seems like something you might want to do in your career.
Right.
The other thing we keep in mind is that what we teach is not only for people who are going to become entrepreneurs right away. It may be for people who are going to become entrepreneurs 20 years from now. It may be people who join a startup instead of starting their own company. And it may also be for people who are going to go work at big companies, but could potentially bring more entrepreneurial thinking into those big company settings. So we try to teach what we teach in a way so it's widely applicable, regardless of your career path.
I love that you're saying that, because in coaching, sometimes you work with someone and you coach them, but you don't really know what the impact of that is until months later, years later. So I love that one of your perspectives in teaching is how can they use this, whether entrepreneurial within a business context, or they might not be an entrepreneur right out of school, right out of business school.
Yes, I like to tell students that I'm not trying to just teach you things you can use the day you graduate. I'm trying to teach you things you can use 10 years from now or 20 years from now, right? And so that means it's going to be more not just a specific tactic, do B if you see A, but a more broad perspective, right? These are steps you can use to try to figure out what to do, things like that.
What are some of the things your students are doing that you're excited about?
Well, so in terms of particular projects they're working on, or just in general, or one of the things, let me tell you, one of the things I'm most excited about right now is I got to start a new program at ZLI, which we're calling ZLT, the Zell Lab for Technology. It's basically, it's somewhat similar. It's kind of a modified accelerator program, but what we're doing is students will submit applications. These are students or alums who are currently working on a tech-based startup. And then we pair them up with design students from our School of Information. And they've been fantastic, really, really talented students. And the students will help they're both students in some cases, but the design students or the School of Information students will help the entrepreneur students or alumni to really accelerate the progress of whatever they're making, right? So let's build more of your product out. Let's add a feature on. If you have a web product, let's move it over to mobile, whatever it is needed for their business. And in addition to that, I meet with them once a week to kind of help them with some frameworks and ways to approach problems, give them feedback on the work they've been doing. And the goal is, number one, to accelerate their development. Design thinking, right? It's all about not just talking about doing something, but actually building and testing. So doing that during the program. But like I said, it's also giving them some skills and some viewpoints and some techniques that they can use at any point further down in their career.
They might all be stealth, but to the degree that they're not, what are the kinds of things that students are coming up with?
We have, I won't mention anyone specifically, as you mentioned, because I don't know if they want me to do that, but we've had ideas all over the board. Some of them are more consumer applications, right? So applications that might help like bars or restaurants accomplish something. Of course, during COVID, that's been a little bit more difficult to do some of those consumer apps. But we also have had a couple of teams I've worked with in the employment space. So helping various hiring entities hire various types of employees. So they're kind of all over the map. There've been apps for or technology to help with fundraising for universities. So it's kind of been all over the place in terms of just what student interests are.
Let me ask you about when you teach students and then you see some of them or some of them come back afterwards. And
Mhm.
specifically what I'd like to know, so you've planned the course for what you think they need to know.
Mhm.
What surprises you when they speak about it afterwards and they say, wow, Rashmi, Professor Menon, this actually made a bigger impact on me than I had expected.
Well, first of all, I'm surprised to hear sometimes overall anyway, because sometimes people contact you like 5 years down the line or something, you haven't heard anything from them, and all of a sudden, whoa. So that's always a pleasant surprise. There's one that surprised me is that a lot of them actually keep the materials much longer than I expected they would. I always joke that the slides I teach off of are super ugly. They're not the beautiful TED Talk style slides, with like 2 gorgeous pictures or whatever. It's a lot of text because it's kind of meant to be a leave behind, right? Something they can refer to and help them remember what we talked about. So I do have people who will say something like, oh, I was going to interview for a product management job or a job at a startup, and I pulled out your class notes and looked through them, and they were really helpful. Um, it's a variety of comments, but it's kind of all over the map. Some people will tell me, oh yeah, the kind of topic in the class that they're interested in seems to really vary. I had a note from someone who said, oh, I really used a lot of the team discussions we had in an internship I just did. Or, so it kind of varies which part of it seems to be applicable to them just based on what they end up doing in their lives.
Yeah. And in the context of your entrepreneurship class, what are you excited about teaching? I imagine you love the whole curriculum, but what especially energizes you?
It's hard to pick one thing. I actually think the integration is one of the things I like, right? Because in business school, of course, students can take a whole term long class about marketing or strategy or, any one of the topics. But my class and entrepreneurship classes in general are some of the few classes that actually bring all of it together. So, we're going to do marketing and we're going to do ops and we're going to do team building and HR and we're going to do, everything that you learn in business school is going to be integrated here. That's another comment I've had from students is like, this is a good way to integrate everything we've learned in school. The other thing I try to leave them with is kind of the difference between what is, so much of the business school curriculum is around larger companies and applying what they learn in larger companies. And what we try to also just pull out is kind of what's different when we're in a startup, right? And how would you have to do things differently because you're in a startup.
That sounds fun. And also, like you said earlier, if you're at a startup or if you're in a startup group within a larger company, how can you apply a lot of these integrated things that you're teaching?
That's right. That's right.
Rashmi, our last 2 questions are about thoughts and about action. So to start, if somebody is watching today and they're thinking about what you're saying and either they are somebody who is not a white male and wants to be an entrepreneur, or they want to support people like that, support diverse entrepreneurs, what's a thought that you would like to leave those people with?
Yeah. So for the first group of people, I always start my classes by talking about the fact that I think entrepreneurship is kind of a core human just something that's innate in all people, right? Every time you think of a better way to make a recipe or a quicker way to drive home or anything like that, you're innovating, right? There's so much innovation in our day-to-day life that we don't notice that we're doing. And that's, I think, part of the reason why people say things like, I don't think I deserve to be an entrepreneur. It's kind of code word for, I don't think I'm innovative. I don't think I have any new ideas. You do, right? So everybody does this. It's core to us. It's something that everybody can do. And of course, there's some skills and practices we'll give you to kind of take you to the next level, but it is a core innate thing in everybody. So I firmly believe this is something that's open to everybody. We need everybody. As you know, there's so many big problems we have to solve today in the world. We need everybody working on these. We need those unique and diverse viewpoints to bring in new ways to solve some of these problems. So I think it's tremendously valuable. And I think, the more I think about it, I think that the DEI conversations we have don't talk enough about allyship, right? Which is what you're bringing up, which is all the rest of us, right? What can we do to help? And I think it's even little things that encourage or support make a difference, right? So showing interest in someone who's trying to do these things, helping someone who's trying to do these things, encouraging people who want to be entrepreneurs but maybe come from non-traditional backgrounds to pursue that as a potential career. And then, of course, anybody who does have resources available to help entrepreneurs, whether that's a venture firm or an accelerator program or any one of a number of resources that help support entrepreneurs, just to make sure that that's something you're thinking about, right? So if you are running an accelerator program and you're bringing in your next cohort of companies, what can I do to make sure that diverse voices are represented? If I'm running a venture firm, what can I do to make sure that we are funding a diverse portfolio of funders? I know more and more what's happened too is that there are venture funds and accelerators and other entities coming in specifically focusing on diversity. And I think that's fantastic, but we won't, this is not going to have widespread effect until everybody focuses on this, right? This has to be something we all work on.
Right. How do we change that 2% for women and 0.2% for people of color? Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I think I read too that in 2018, more venture funding went to Juul, the e-cigarette company. They got more funding than women funded startups. Talk about societal value, right?
And then our last question. If you could snap your finger and almost everyone in the world were to take some action, any action, could be related to what you've been talking about or not, what would you want that action to be?
Build compassion for yourself and for others. So start with yourself. A lot of people suffer because they feel they're not adequate. There's something not good about them, that they're not worthy of anything that anybody else is able to do, right? So I'm not worthy of loving relationships, or I'm not worthy of a meaningful career or something like that. Everybody is worthy. So have compassion for yourself and then try to extend that compassion to others, right? We may disagree with each other, but we do need to find a way to live together on this earth, right? And I think compassion helps with that. If you can try to understand where other people are coming from, maybe we can have a more peaceful and pleasant world to live in.
Yeah. So be compassionate towards yourself and towards others.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thank you so very much. This has been Rashmi Menon with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.